Councilor Cormier to address the question with you, or are you ready to just go into the response?
Well, sure, I'll respond to it, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to look at the layout that's out there on the street as we look at it at the DPW.
All right, so first of all, Roger, thank you very much for coming down, and thank you for this map. I mean, this is like as self-explanatory to me as it gets. I mean, it's the first time I've seen it, and I mean, you can figure it out the second you look at it. So I guess the question that arose is there's still some residents up there, obviously, you know, you can tell on this map, that are not tied into the city sewer. And they have aging septic systems, and they kind of sort of want to know, you know, where everything stands in terms of them being able to be tied in. So I see here on this map you show homes that can be tied into the city sewer, and then you show the ones that cannot be. And I think that some of the neighbors here that are questioning when they can be hooked up are probably the ones that are in red, which cannot be, and then homes that that already are tied into the city's sewer system. So it looks like we're looking at maybe about a dozen or so that cannot be. Why is that?
Okay,
Let's
you've got
talk
them
about
on
the ones in red.
You've got them on each side. Now, when we say they can't be because the infrastructure is not in front of their property. Some of them can be. We did designs. I was just looking over there on the wall to see who was here, who wasn't here. Councilor Frieda was here. She was a proponent of doing these designs back in 2000, 2001. So we did a number of these. So the map or the design to do this is completed, but the ones that are connected or in blue that can connect have the pipe in the street ready to go. Mm-hmm. They can tie in.
So they've chosen not to.
Correct. And until you have a failed septic system, they don't have to tie in. You don't have to tie in just because we went by your door.
Right.
But once you have a failed septic system, then you're required to tie in. Now, the properties in red, which I'm sure are the ones you're most interested in, there is no infrastructure in front of those properties.
Okay.
So that's why we're saying there's no ability at this time to make the connection. What has happened historically, we've done it in a number of neighborhoods. The city provides the material to do the installation. The neighborhood gets together. They usually designate one or two people to act like project managers, and they work with the DPW. They have to go out and get a design for any of the houses that are going to connect to the main collection line. But we've got the design to do the main collection line. So some of these, a couple of these, if you look at it, top right-hand corner, they sit down a little bit, so they would have to pump into a line in order to be able to access the sewer. The ones that run along from the end of J Ave coming across, some of those would be able to go by gravity. And I don't have that information right now, but they can come down to the DPW, take a look at the drawing. Again, it's fully designed, so.
So this whole neighborhood is designed.
Correct.
But clearly you can see that not everybody has pipe there. So
right.
I guess, to make a long story short, where do these people, if they chose, you know, they want to move forward because, you know, they're nervous about their septic system. Mm-hmm. I guess at this point, you know, what's the next step that they'd have to take, and how much money are you talking about a betterment type thing?
We haven't done betterments. We provide the materials, and they in turn get together and they make the connection. There's an ordinance for any time people put in the sewer line, they spend more than $5,000 per house, then they get a connection fee is waived. So that's how that's been done over the last 10, 15 years. The easiest thing is for them to come down to DPW. We can sit down with them, show them the design, show them what's got to be done. The ones that are gravity, obviously, are fairly straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
People that might have to pump into a manhole to get into the system would have a little bit of a different design that they would have to do. Not impossible, but there are a couple of different technologies out there now that would allow them to make that connection. One of the things we found when Mr. Bevenzi did a connection, he made an agreement with the neighbors that he would put in sewer for a number of these people.
Right, right.
So that's where the line on Debbie Drive comes out from the end of J Ave all the way up to almost to Beth Ave. When we did that work, there is a significant amount of ledge there.
Right.
So it's not, one of the problems I'm sure they're having is that there isn't a lot of available space to upgrade a septic system. So I'm sure that's one of the problems.
So, you know, just obviously knowing the neighborhood and understanding the nature of it, you know, this area right here is kind of like up on a ridge, right?
Correct.
And then this area lies low, correct?
Right.
So could you, basically, the way I look at it then, or what you've explained, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you could technically make like two separate projects out of this. then.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because, you know, the top part of the hill here would tie in differently than down, what's sitting down below.
Correct.
Right? So you probably would want to work with, break these neighborhood up in two and work with each of these sections separately, because they're different dynamics, is that what you're saying?
It would be different costs, and they would be better off doing it as two separate projects, no doubt
Right,
about it.
right, right.
If you look at where J Ave meets Beth Ave,
Mhm.
you'll see a little green dot on that line.
Yep.
That's a sewer manhole. So you could tie in going in either direction, either going up that slope on Beth Ave or around Debbie Drive to the corner. So those are both options.
Okay. Okay. So you suggest that everybody, all these people in the neighborhood get together and you could set up a meeting at the DPW?
Well, they can do that if you or somebody wants to coordinate a neighborhood meeting for these people. I'm happy to attend some night. We've done that historically. We've
Right.
met with the neighborhood. You know, you want to meet at some local facility that have space for, 25 or 30 people to get together and just go over it. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
If somebody wants to come and get the actual design, we'll make them a copy, so they'll have a hard copy to discuss with the neighbors, so they can get an idea of what's out there. I think when we did that in 2000, 2001, we did a number of neighborhoods. We did Grant and Argentine, we did this one. We'd already done West Street, had already been done, but we did Ridgewood and Mountain View, Scenic, that area. So we've done a number of these projects in this fashion, and it's worked pretty well.
Yeah, what I'll do is, and I know there's two gentlemen in the audience, and I believe that they're up on the ridge, where it'd be gravity-driven, and it seems to me like that'd be, if you're gonna cut this project and make two projects out of it, I think
Sure.
the gravity one, the one that sits high, would probably be the easier one to do first anyway, I'd have to assume. Right.
I would
one with the-
caution you on the ledge on that slope.
Yeah, you think,
I know for a fact that it's, the house that's, number 48 that's on the corner as you come up from the crossings,
mm-hmm,
there's an outcropping of ledge immediately in his backyard. I mean, it's not even, it's got to be 6, 8 inches above the surface of the driveway and soil, so it's prominent there. There's a lot of it.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, that's more than likely the reason there is no municipal sewer in there as we speak.
right,
The cost to be prohibitive.
right. Well, what I can do is, I can talk to the city clerk's office and see if we can maybe, send a letter or something to all these properties. I can go visit them, talk to them,
Sure.
and then be in touch with you to see if we can set up a meeting. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I keep hearing about this and hearing about it and hearing about it, and it's not gonna go away, and the ledge isn't gonna go away. So either the neighbors are gonna agree that they're gonna work with the city and do something, or they can worry about their septic systems. I mean, it's not gonna change if we don't do anything, so.
Well, there are 9 of them right immediately there that
Right.
don't have anything in front. And,
Right.
you know, there are some new technologies that are out there. We have an E1. The city doesn't maintain those there are private pumps that are in the basement, or they can be outside. But in this neighborhood, I think it's going to be more cost-effective for the people to put them in the basement itself. And then run a force main, which is going to be a lot shallower. But then they could run it down to the connection or the junction of J Ave and Beth Ave.
Right.
But that's not going to be an easy project if you're going to dig it. Digging there is going to entail a lot of blasting or hard rock hammering.
Right. And now, what about these ones down low? They gonna have to pump up? Or
Well, no, you're okay to the corner. There are probably 5 or 6 of those houses that you'd have to pump. But if you look at the blue one at the very end there, they're just preparing to tie in by gravity to the back. That's the last one that'll be able to go into that gravity line.
Right.
Those, and the next ones coming this way are probably gonna have to pump up, and it'd be a matter of determining where you put a manhole on Debbie Drive at that point.
Now, whatever pumps in to the back there, right? It goes up through Brooks Pond.
Correct.
Do we have authorization to tie these houses into that? Or is that infrastructure still owned by, I think it's Mr. Bevenzi?
Correct. It's still owned by them. He's been very accommodating. If people have a failed septic system, he's worked with us to allow them to connect. So he's been very good that way. We have not, at this point, accepted there's a sewer pump station that he maintains and pays for, and that's why it's with his permission that these people get connected, because he pays the expense of actually pumping that wastewater.
Right, right. So if we wanted to connect in there right now, could we or could we not?
If it was discretionary and there was no failed system, I'm sure he'd say, you know, leave it the way it is. But if somebody had a failed system, you could talk to them about doing something like that. I think you're limited, though, on how many of those you'd want to do, because the rest could come over by gravity, and it'd be a lot easier and a lot less maintenance. Long-term, you know, gravity is always the easiest way to go. You don't have any pumping costs, you don't have any maintenance costs, so it's fairly economical to do it that way.
Okay. All right, I think I'm good for the moment. I know there's people here, I don't know if they want to have any questions, but that's up to you, Mr.
Okay.
President.
All right, thank you. Any other councilors have questions? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much, Roger. This is really helpful. I just want to make sure that I understand. When you mentioned the little dot, Beth Ave and J Ave, that is a sewer manhole.
Correct.
So a line could go up. Was that Debbie Drive? That comes all the way around, right? So it could go up that hill where number 200 and 197, where all of those red houses are?
Correct.
Okay,
That one, that's actually a fairly flat terrain. That's not,
okay.
so,
On the map
I mean,
itself, yeah.
as you know, it's tough, because when you're looking at it here, you don't get the topography and how it's laid
Right.
out. But that one's fairly flat until you get over to the corner where it really dips down, you know, about 6, 7 feet. So the people on that end would wind up pumping. The people up at the top are going to have an issue because it's sloped on a fairly steep angle, but it's all ledge up there.
Right, so that's
So-
the challenge.
Correct.
Where that sewer line, the existing sewer line up at the top there, it ends right in front of 147, up on the top.
You're at 140.
Debbie Drive, I'm at 147, it's a
Okay,
greenhouse
yep.
on the corner
Yeah,
of
yeah.
J Ave and Debbie?
Yep.
So that's where that line ends, correct?
Just keep going a little bit farther towards 151, and you'll see a little dot where,
Yep.
just in
Yep.
back of that line.
Okay,
So that's where that line ends.
okay. And it can't continue around that corner and then down Beth Ave to connect at J and to Beth Ave?
No, because you don't have, this is a gravity connection, and that, if you got beyond that point, you wouldn't be able to flow by gravity into that manhole. So you get to that point, and
Yep.
then now you're too much down, so you can't pump in. You could pump into that, but you can't gravity feed into that.
Okay, okay. So any extension on the lower part of Beth Ave, all of the 9 red, right, that you were talking about? That is something that people that live in those homes could work with the city and DPW to figure out a plan, and they would pay for the cost of the sewer line in the street as well as the connection to their own homes?
Okay, if the costs exceed $5,000 per homeowner, they have to pay for the connections to physically connect.
Right.
All of that, correct. But then we don't charge a connection fee if it exceeds $5,000 by ordinance.
Well, if what exceeds 5,000?
If their cost is individuals, in other words.
Of the whole
let's say
project.
you've got 9 houses there and the project costs $50,000, it's just
Sure.
as a number.
Sure.
That exceeds $5,000 for each one of them, so they would not pay a connection fee.
Okay,
But you would want us to take a look at this, and then we do have a design on it, so they can come down and take a look at it. There might be other options. These were done in 2001, 2002. So,
right, but there is an opportunity for homeowners to be able to pay for the construction of the sewer line as well as a connection to their home.
correct.
That's what we're talking about. Okay, good. No, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on
Yeah.
that.
It's not anything to do with the city. At that point,
Right.
we will provide, again, the materials, and they would select a contractor. Ideally, you do what the city does. We go out to bid, you get bids from 2 or 3 contractors locally, get the one that the group feels comfortable with, whether it's low price or a matter of consensus amongst the group, because they're not tied to municipal purchasing laws that we are. But they could go in and then work on the project, and then, but they have to have the funding in place.
And then all of these blue homes, there are a number of blue homes on your map that are not connected to the sewer line.
Right.
But they can,
It's correct.
in the event that their septic systems fail.
When this was installed, we made the developer run laterals to the property line, so these people, they don't have to go
Yep.
back and dig up the street again.
Yep.
So,
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, yep.
Council Bonanza?
Roger, just sort of out of a concern for fundamental fairness, and to take as an example, the 9 homes that are on Beth Avenue there where the ledge is suspected. So if 7 of those homeowners get together and decide that they'll foot the bill for the common sewer, that's what we're talking about, right?
correct.
And the city provides the materials. So what happens if, there's people that don't participate, and then years go by, 2 or 3, and they decide, well, there's a common sewer out there, I think I'll go connect to it, just pay the connection fee and sort of welch on the cost of the common sewer. How does
Yeah.
that work out?
Just as you described.
So,
Once it's connected to the city's system by ordinance,
right,
it becomes city property.
right.
Once it's city property,
So
they
once,
can make the connection.
yeah, so once
And it's
that-
happened.
so once that common sewer is paid for by the homeowners that participate, it's fair game for anybody else.
Correct.
So why wouldn't it make, if you were one of those 9 homeowners, wouldn't it make more sense really to have a betterment? And have the city, force everybody to participate in it?
We've tried to stay away from betterments,
Yeah.
and not everybody wants to participate. There's a lot more work with that, recording fees, legal documentation, and then you'd wind up with deed restrictions on all the properties.
Well, until it's paid, right?
Right, correct.
But that doesn't force everybody to participate? So if you have,
Well,
if there's 7, like in my example, if there's 7 people that are ready to ante up, and there's 2 recalcitrant homeowners who are just smart enough to say, I'll just wait till it's there and then I'll connect. Doesn't it avoid that problem?
Not necessarily, because if you've got two of the 7, or 2 of the 9, our rule of thumb back in 1999, 2000 was you wanted to get 80% participation.
Right,
So you wouldn't have participation to that extent.
yeah,
It's a tough call. I mean, your point's valid. Not everybody wants to tie in, because either A, they don't have the money,
yeah.
they don't want to spend the money, they want to wait until somebody else does the work, and then they'll tie in after the fact, because it's a lot
Right.
cheaper.
Right,
No question.
okay, just curious.
Okay, thank you. Council Feckley?
Roger, you mentioned that there were some homes up on Beth Ave, further up, that you'd have to blast or do quite a bit of excavation, right? Can you, just mention a few of the numbers, just so I,
It's all the ones on the bottom, Counselor. If you look at
on the
Just-
bottom,
yeah.
okay,
those 9, right there at that corner, there's an outcropping of rock right in the backyard.
okay.
And when we did all of this line going around Debbie Drive down here to the first red house, we had to hammer all the way around from the very beginning, at number 10, all the way down to just beyond Berry Lane. It's a pretty significant rock
Yeah.
in that project.
So wouldn't that be problematical if somebody wanted to go with it and the other neighbors wouldn't want to? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
people don't want blasting near their house.
Right. Oh, yeah, no,
So-
I understand. The only thing, I mean, one of the things we were talking about a second ago was the new technologies. There are some pumping technologies that'd be probably a little less digging. Historically, your sewers are 6 to 8 feet deep. Here, where the slope goes down to J Ave, you wouldn't have to be as deep, but you do want it to be down so it can adequately flow by gravity. So, but these houses right in here, you know, the last house that tied in, if you look at, not the one on the corner, but at the very last one on that south end, you look at the 5 here and then the one here in the corner.
Yep.
That tied in, it went through a neighbor's yard. It secured an easement and ran through the yard in order to be able to access the trunk line. So,
Without having to go through a lot of ledge.
correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Council Frida.
Yes, nobody knows this area better than me, 46 years living there. And I think some of the misconception that took place was when Brooks Pond was being built. And when Peter Bavenzi went to the immediate neighborhood that abut that property, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, because we were in this together for 15 years. Some of the field systems were not to, he dealt with those people so that the integrity of his project would not be affected by having failed systems abutting his property. That was the original intent of hooking these people up through the back, their property. He did that, he made the agreement with those people. There was a change in zoning, they needed their support, wanted their support. There were many, many meetings with those people. And I think what happened is after he did that, we began to have some failed systems up around the corner. And as that was happening, Peter agreed to do some of those properties and go up to the top so that they could connect if need be. I think Beth Avenue felt that they should be part of the project, but they weren't directly affected by the Brooks Pond project. And I think that was the bigger part of the issue. We did work with some of the people back when Bob George, back in the day, wanted to connect, but there weren't, it goes to Councilor Bedanza's point, that there weren't 50% of the people, and we were looking for 75% as a rule, that agrees to put the store in. And there wasn't that consensus for a long time to work on it. But that's why that area, it had no direct effect of Brooks Pond. So the area, I think the confusion, a lot of it came from why did Bavenzi do the Debbie Drive area and the area that abut his property, but didn't do Beth Ave. He really had no obligation to do Beth Avenue. It wasn't affected by the project. I mean, in fairness, he didn't have to do the Debbie Drive that he did, and I think if he had to think about doing it again, he'd think twice because ledge was a major issue in a lot of those properties. So, and there's gonna be ledge. I mean, you know there's ledge up there in your property. I mean, you know where it is. It's gonna be an issue there. When we did Grant Street and Argentine Street, that was a beginning project. That was the same thing. Those people were told for years and years and years that they'd never have SOAR up there because there was too much ledge. And I think there was something like 20 different petitions that were put in to request SOAR, and they were told no. But eventually, you know, the mayor agreed to look into it, and it was the same type of relationship, a third, and a third. And even that, field systems, no septic systems, leach fields, in most cases, 5,000 square foot lots, and they were able to come to a consensus, but it took a while to get to 75%. Remember, Roger?
Yeah.
I mean, even with systems that were failed, they were older people that really had trouble talking about affording it. So, I mean, it's certainly a project worth doing, but it's got to be the consensus of the neighborhood, and it can get costly if you're dealing with ledge to blast.
What's that? Thank you. Roger, any response to that? Okay,
Covered it, sounded just,
yeah, yeah.
just right.
I saw Roger a lot more
I'm
than I really
sure.
wanted to for
sure.
15 years.
There's a lot of work that goes into these, you know, because it's been mentioned around the table. You've got to get consensus in the neighborhood. People have different financial situations. What's good for one doesn't work for somebody else. The difficulty in sewer, see my friend Assessor Mitchell here at the moment. When you assess a property, the properties are assessed either as a septic or as municipal sewer. So if it didn't have sewer on a municipal basis when the property was built and purchased, you know, there's no tax impact to that property for not having sewer. You know, it's not assessed for something it doesn't have. So, you know, it'd be like buying a house. You've got a two-family or a house with a two-car garage and somebody else doesn't. You can't go to the building department and say, hey, I'd like the city to put in a two-car garage because my neighbor has one. But it's an expensive proposition. It really is. But we're happy to work with anybody. We've got the drawings. I've actually got an extra copy I can give these gentlemen so they can take it with them. But the actual plan and profile that was designed by Whitman and Bingham back in 2002 is available down the yard. We can make a copy. We can give them that to take with them. And then, you know, if you want to work in the neighborhood with them, that's fine. And we're happy to give you whatever input we can.
Thank you.
I
Any other-
appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Any other councilors have any other questions? We're all set? Okay, Roger, thank you very much for coming down this evening.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Roger, also, did the city clerk get a copy of this for the public record as
Sure.
well?
I made an extra copy for her.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Do I have to take the exams twice, or can I just give you my library copy?
This one does.
All right. All right. I'll bring
No,
it.
okay.
It's this one here. Yeah. Oh, I mean, when you.
Don't sign
Oh,
here.
okay. I just gave him a certificate tonight, though.
Does John have that? John, you have your hearing on that first reading? You get that too? Okay, good. The one. Yeah, okay, thank you. This is just regular votes here. Oh, sure, yes, ma'am. Haven't seen the easel in a while.
Easel. Easel. How's that? All right, real quickly.
Good evening, Mayor.
While he's setting that up.
Go for it.
So,
Thank you.
as you remember, Wendy Weeks, the grant
administrator was here not too long ago to speak about the grant opportunity where they wanted us to appropriate the money and authorize the purchase of, I'm sorry, authorize the grant and the funding needed in case we got the grant, or we got the grant. It was a little bit of a strange set of circumstances that the state set up, but that was the rules, and we were notified the end of last week, or there was supposed to be an announcement, and then the snowstorm, so they delayed it. So either way, it was either Friday or Monday, but, so we got the $400,000 for the Mechanic and Laurel Street Park. The total amount to be spent on that park is about $600,000, and it'll be a walking track, open space, play lawn, new concrete sidewalks, fieldstone walls, new lighting, site furniture, including benches, grills, bike racks, tables, and chairs, 33 new trees, and black ornamental fencing, which was requested by the neighbors at the time. So
Excellent.
that's good news. As you know, for a very dense area of the community, they've had very little. Everybody knows kids for many years played in the streets, self-included. There were very few parks. And when they ripped down the old Spruce Street School, that was the only place that there was a basketball court, and that was gone. So there've been very limited recreational services in the area, and this is really going to help. It's just some space. It's not swing sets and typically the jungle gyms and the things that we're accustomed to. It's space for people that live there to be able to enjoy. So the Carter Park over at Mechanic and Laurel Street. So, Bill Mitchell, the assessor, with me tonight. If you have any tax questions, he's here.
Thank you for that.
And just to remind everybody, I mean, the field of calls that we've been getting and the people coming to City Hall are really people with, obviously, I haven't heard from anybody whose value went down, therefore their tax bill went down. Haven't heard from any of them. I expect somebody to show up. I'm not sure who. But anyway, especially as an owner of a 2 or 3 family, I could tell you my tax bills went up. And understandably, I don't like for them to go up. But the reality is I think you've heard from somebody somewhere. Everyone has at least heard from a couple of people. And I think you've had, when you set the tax, when the classification hearing, I think Bill explained, but I don't think people fully understood until they opened the bill. That's when you fully understand. In any event, 2s and 3s have gone up in value, and they're based on the sale prices from 2016. And they're still climbing. I said many years ago, the ranch that I own is, every year, even in a bad economy, ranches were going up in value, simply because everybody wants to live in a ranch now. Young and seniors, and they're in demand, and there isn't much in the way of supply out there. Anybody that's in the real estate business will tell you that. Councilor Freed, I'm sure you can sort of shed some light on that. So, you know, the question always is, but I'm not selling my house. I realize that, but we follow the general laws of the Commonwealth, and so the real answer is if anybody has a question about value, they can either go online, you can find everything online that you would like and more. You can look at your neighbor's information, you can look at my information, look at your information, they can compare any information that they have, but they have 30 days, and that's the important thing is they have 30 days to file for an abatement. So yeah, that's a critical time, because once that time's gone, then there's very little the assessor's office can do. So.
I did put a video link on the front page of the assessor's website this morning. The mayor and I filmed a very small 25-minute segment on LATV this morning to talk about your tax bill and all of that information, where you can find it and where you can find your valuation. So that link is on the front page of my site. So you can check that out if you have questions, or you can call our office. We're happy to help out. So,
as I try to explain to everybody, elected officials do not set value, or everybody's would be $10,000, right? So we don't set value. It's done through very competent assessors, following the general laws and formulas. And so, but if anybody does have a question about it, we don't want to tax people on things that they shouldn't be taxed on, or values of things that aren't consistent, and we could be in error, and sometimes that happens, but that's what we're glad to help people with. So anyway, here's a piece of land on Central Street. It's way down on Central Street on the left-hand side of the street. If you go past the lights at Central and Willard Street, go a little further. This is somewhere around when you're coming out of Jitech Park on the left-hand side. So you're driving down Central, Jitech Park's on your right, Jitech Park Road, And to the left is a piece of land that is owned by a private family. They've approached us. It's not under 61A.
No.
But they approached us in good faith, and that sometimes happens, and asked if we'd be interested in purchasing the land at all. And we have some interest. We walked the piece of land a couple of different times from top to bottom. It's a really nice piece of land, and so we just wanted to put this on your radar screen. We're not looking for anybody to say yay or nay now. Just get it on your radar screen. But I think the owner is probably very soon gonna probably list it. So we need to get back to them with an answer. Some people had looked at it on the recreational end and said it would make a beautiful dog park. The city is still looking for a home for a dog park, but it's a very nice piece of land. It sort of controls the development in that area. And so if anybody would like to go look at it, the first warm day that we can walk out there, I'd be glad to show you around. In the meantime,
We spoke with the family for the last few months, because he's been interested in selling it. They're interested in giving it to the city, selling it to the city for a pretty good price. They would want, of course, this is from the Leggett family, so they would like to see it go to the city and something special, and maybe have a plaque or something to recognize their family name on behalf of selling it to the city for what they want. We did walk the piece of land, myself, John Roseberry, the recreational director, planning director, just to get a feel for the slope of the property. It looks a lot steeper when you're looking at the maps, but it is a very pleasant walk. It does have a small access up at Leggett Hill. A lot of the frontage is right on Central Street. It's directly across from LKQ. I do have another map there I can show you in a second. But it's a very nice piece of land. It's 25.64 acres, so it's a large piece of land. It is right on the Sterling and Leominster border. I understand that Sterling is recently changing their zoning for that corridor. So I don't know how that would affect their development as they come into Leominster, but it's a piece of property that could provide us multiple opportunities, whether it's a dog park or whether it's some sort of municipal use in the future. There's certainly something down the road we could look at. The property is assessed at $325,000 now. They're looking for a price of about $350,000, which seems fine. We can't pay 25% more than the average assessed value for the past 3 years, so that's well within the guidelines of what we could do. But they're kind of looking for some answer from us whether we'd be interested in the property before they list it. So that's why we're putting it in front of you tonight. Now, let me just flip the map so you can see an aerial view of the property. That gives you a better idea of the map. So you have Leggett Hill Road here, some single-family homes here. You can see there's a very small access here to the property, and this is the piece of land here. This is LKQ right there. So that's the piece of property we're talking about.
Unimproved, right?
Unimproved, that's correct. There's nothing there. There's subdivisions that surround all of it. So this is an opportunity for the city to buy it and maybe keep it from being developed into more homes or another subdivision, and keep it for municipal use. And we don't want to get, I think we don't want to get backed into something like we did with the landfill, where we use a grant maybe and then we're trapped into a recreational use. We certainly can do that, but I don't think we want to back ourselves into the corner, especially where it's another entrance to the city from another town. So it's just food for thought for you all to take a look at. You have questions, I can certainly provide more information for you if you need to.
Bill, what's the current zoning on that?
I have that on the map. I don't know. I don't really know. I can find out for you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilor Frida, sorry, you hand
How
first.
big is it, Bill?
25.6 acres, so it's a very large piece.
What's that, Councilor? Good? Okay, Councilor Cormier?
Yeah, is this affected at all by the utility easement, right? Isn't there?
There's a power line easement. You can see right at the bottom
Right.
left-hand page there. It is actually just on the corner of the property.
Oh,
That
okay, so
large
just-
power line easement is right there.
So is it on the property itself or right on the edge of?
Right on the
border?
edge.
Okay.
Yep, right on the edge.
As property values go up and land's values turn around, we're gonna get more of these. As families that have property in 61A or B get older and those ownerships change, we will see more of these kinds of things coming to us, where 61A or B is the right of first refusal, where they have an offer, and they're gonna come to us, and that's part of our capital improvement plan, is acknowledging the fact that there are a couple of key pieces of land in the city that could be offered to the city for purchase. We'll have the right of first refusal, have 60 days, is it? You have 60 days to either, match that offer or not. So we're just trying to bring these up on the radar screen. The whole point, one way to look at it is, you get the control, or the city gets the control. It will not be it's not a grant that we're purchasing it with, so we have control over what happens to the land after, if we decide to sell it for whatever reason. Similar to the landfill, we decide ultimately what goes, I'm sorry, not the landfill, but the transfer station, ultimately we decide. That last piece of land at Barrett, Samoset, the whole purpose of that was so that we could control that property, which was to just leave it and let it sit there. But we didn't end up accepting that, so I believe it either was or was going to be turned over to a charitable trust or a nonprofit. So we lose that ability to control that piece of land. We no longer have that opportunity. Obviously, they're subject to zoning or whatever, but, so these are the kinds of things that will be coming forward. The values have changed. They were very low at one time. People weren't interested in buying land to develop, and that trend is turning, and this is one of the first of the projects that come through, where the families decided it's been sitting there paying taxes on it. Value wasn't there. It's beginning to go back up, and now the families are deciding to sell.
I just did look it up on my phone. The zoning along Central Street, about 300 feet off of Central Street, is RB, and then everything in excess going up towards Leggett is zone RA. So that's what it's
So
zoned currently.
3 quick questions. The timeline, when something would come down here for confirmation or decision, funding mechanism, what account would be coming out of? And then, does this have anything to do with watershed protection? It doesn't appear it does, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, it's not under the watershed protection area. So timeline, we're probably looking at 90 days. We've got to determine where this money would come from. I've got to get back with the owners to see if this is just to kind of understand what your appetite might be for something like this. I know we've been looking for a dog park for a long time. I don't know if this is something you guys might be amenable to, but certainly we'd like to move forward with that and talk to the finance team and see what the best opportunity would be, either through a grant or whether it would be coming out of a fund of ours to purchase the property.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yeah, thank you very much. So if it's zoned Residence A, most of it, right? It would have to be rezoned for anything like a dog park.
Resident B.
Well, it's Residence B
Residence
and
B
A.
along the Central Street side, and then
Right.
RA as the back half, as it goes up the hill, right towards Leggett Hill. Yeah,
Right, exactly. So I'm
Yeah.
imagining that the bulk of it is Residence A.
right. The bulk of it is Residence A.
Okay, so that would have to be rezoned in order to be used as a dog park.
Not for
No.
recreational.
Don't know if that,
Not for recreation?
It's like a park, same as a park.
yeah.
It's a
Oh.
park.
So if it's a government function, it wouldn't have to be. In other words, if the park is controlled by the city, it wouldn't, the city doesn't.
And we're not, I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that we're saying this, because that's how fast, right now, somebody's on social media saying the city's proposing that, and all the neighbors up there, this all just happened while we're sitting here.
Right,
So I
yeah.
want to make it first, we were just suggesting that we looked at it and somebody said, hey, this make a nice dog park. We're not saying that at all. Here's all we're saying. I know Council Dombrowski's laughing, but he knows what I mean. All we're saying is, here's a piece of land, the family has said, are you interested in it? And we'd like to get back to them in the next couple of months and tell them whether or not, whether we are or not. If we're not, then we just want to let them know so they can sort of move on and list it with a
When the
with a
weather
realtor.
breaks a little bit.
Tomorrow. You said a
Thursday,
little
Thursday.
bit.
Look at it. Other than that, if you want to take a drone,
Yeah, okay. I
bring
can,
us on a drone tour.
okay.
Yeah, to get out there, I mean, I drove by from both ends, kind of walked in a little bit, but then one day I went in there and spent some time. It's really a nice piece of land.
It is very nice.
And yep, it's just a decision we have to make, and whether the timing is right or not, and if not, they list it and move on to the next step for them.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
If I understand, if we're talking about a dog park, and that is one of many potential uses. But I guess in order for me to make any kind of qualified decision, about whether or not to support that purchase, I mean, I would need to know what the use is gonna be.
What
So-
if we don't know the use? What if it's open space for a time being, but it's something where it's, because a lot of the conversation is, it's another entrance to the city from another municipality. We don't know what the zoning's gonna, what that's gonna be like in Sterling, and so if we can't provide a future use to you, other than it keeping it as open space for the time being, that might be something that's coming before you.
Is it under the power lines?
Just that corner, if you see the strip down at the lower left-hand corner, right above the title of the map?
Yep.
That clear strip right there is that 300-foot power line, so it does touch the corner as you come into Leominster.
And none of it is industrial?
No, none of it's industrial,
None of it's owned industrial?
no.
Okay.
All set?
And the road goes through, there's a paper road that goes through to the top of the property to Leggett Hill. That was another reason to sort of control what happens there. I think we wouldn't be able to tell you what the use would be, other than the city would have it under its general control. If we apply for a recreation grant, then it has to be used for that. But this would just be to control what happens in the future there. We would decide, so it would take the city council vote to decide whether or not to declare that property surplus for whatever project it might be. It might be a project you want, and if it's not, then you don't have to sell it.
Right.
But you do tie up some city money. I mean, there's pros and cons to the whole concept.
Counselor, you all set? I am. Okay, Counselor Dombrowski was next.
I just had one question. Do we know at this point where the water and sewer access is?
So there is a water access point going into Research Drive there at the entrance. So any water that would be provided to that would have to come from across the street.
So how many
there is
feet-
no sewer.
How many feet away is that?
I think it's about 300 feet or more. When I was talking to Joe Roseberry, because he was out there with us when we walked the property, he pointed that out.
And what about sewer?
And there's no sewer down there.
There's no sewer down there.
Right.
It goes down to the,
I think to the park.
right, but the other way. It goes down to the 7-day, I mean, it comes up to a certain portion.
Okay.
I don't know how far it's come up, but it's within reach.
All set, Counselor?
But plenty of time to find out more information. We're not looking for an answer from anybody tonight, we're just introducing it to you.
Counselor Cormier?
Yeah, I know we have, the city has an open space fund, and
Mhm.
and I don't know how much money we have in there, I don't think it's a ton. But could we use it for this use, and if we do, are we then sort of limiting ourselves to what we can do with it at that point if we spend money out of that fund?
We can certainly look at that, absolutely. I would imagine if it's an open space fund, you might be tied into that use, but we can certainly look at that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I think I looked at that, total of that account years back, when I was chair of finance. I don't think there's a lot of money in there
No.
anyway. And I
There've
think
been
we-
land purchase accounts, people have come back and, purchase property from the city, small amounts, but there's not a huge amount in there.
Right, yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Counselor?
Sorry. Council Cormier just reminded me of a question that a constituent recently raised about the open space fund. I think on the back of people's tax bills, there's an opportunity for people to check off a box and donate some money into that. So the constituent who emailed me asked, how much is in the account? What has any money been spent out of the account, and what it would have been spent on?
No, I don't think we've spent any money. We might have done an appraisal on some properties, but I don't think we've used it. We haven't really bought any open space.
Do you know how
for a
much is in the
while.
account?
I don't offhand, I didn't know you
Okay.
were gonna ask, but I
All
can
right, we'll
find out.
follow up. I'll
Yeah,
fo- I'll
I can
follow
let
up.
you know. We can send out an email tomorrow.
Thank you. Counselor Feckley?
A real quick question, do you know if there's any conservation issues on that land? I know you said
Not
it's
on
not
NO, if
watershed.
I think Marco walked the site with us, there's a little stream on the property, but I don't know if it's a perennial stream or intermittent stream, so that would be some differences that would affect the land.
Okay, thanks.
Any other councilors, last round? If not, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay,
And again,
appreciate it.
on the tax situation, if you have any questions, please get them to us. We don't mind answering them. And the last thing is, I think there's a misconception that somehow or another valuations bring in money to the city. I don't know if you want to answer that or not, and see, because I think people think, if I sit here and we talk to 5 people and they all say my taxes went up 400 and 300, 200, that somehow or another the city just took in $700 in new taxes, and that the reality is that's why the tax rate dropped, but if you want to just
We do,
explain.
you know, we get that all the time, and that's important, because we're constantly being barraged with that type of accusation when we go out to properties. We talked about this at the classification hearing, but it's important to know that the assessors are just out there valuing your house, which determines how much you pay in taxes of the entire budget. So when we're slicing up that pie, you know, that's what we're doing. We're not raising new tax dollars, you know, so if I raise, you know, Ms. Feckley's house to another $100,000 and we collect another $2,000 in taxes, that is not, that is collecting more money. We're taking that $2,000 that your tax bill increased and reducing everybody else's by 2 pennies. And so it's shifting the burden from one property to another is what you're doing. So there's no new tax dollars being done.
But-
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I understand that argument, but really, it's all about the budget. So you can't say that we're not raising new tax dollars if the budget goes up $10 million or $2 million or $1 million.
Right.
That, it's all about funding the budget. So the valuations, you're right, you know, some go up and some go down, and the
Correct.
tax rate is really a function of the valuations and the budget. So, you know, semantics aside, taxes do go up, and they go up on a lot of people, and that's a function really of the budget.
The budget, right. It's not a function of me revaluing
It's
your
not,
property.
it's not the assessors, you guys
Right.
are not the bad, I mean, yeah, no, I understand the point that you're trying to make,
Right.
Bill,
Okay.
but thank you.
Right, so we pass the budget, and then you have tax classification. Then the pie is redistributed. So when that's redistributed, and somebody's paying more, for mine went from, one of my properties went from 178 to
211.
211. None of that money is going to be spent in any department, in any part of the city. If yours went up, not a penny of that. It's redistributed. So somebody's going to stay the same, somebody's going to go down. Not a penny of that. And I think there's a misconception that that money's coming in and the city has that money available to be spent. It doesn't. It's just redistributed. The budget was already determined back in June. So once
But the
that's
bud-
passed,
Council, we're
Once
here
that's passed.
specifically on Central Street.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a side conversation, which I respect.
well,
but let's have-
any questions, but that's an important thing, because
Let's have-
that's what's
yeah.
making our phone ring, is people think that we're gonna have like this massive amount of money, and why don't we reduce the tax rate, and why don't we put it here and spend it here? And we're
Right.
like, we're not taking in a penny from this. It's more coming from you, but somewhere else it's getting redistributed, because their values didn't go up quite as much. So
Gotcha.
we're just trying to add a public service here to try to, if we can get the information out, people understand it and not think that, you know, this is another way of sort of raising people's funds to run the city.
I really don't want to get sidetracked
Okay,
here.
that's
Because
fine.
we're here tonight specifically on the situation with Central Street that I want to talk about. If we want to have a meeting with this as an agenda item, I have no problem with that, but thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to start the public forum in a moment. Okay, the public forum is now open. We have a couple of folks that have signed up. The public forum allows an opportunity for people in the audience to speak specifically on any item listed on the agenda. Please try to limit your comments to 2 minutes, and the council can now respond. However, if I need to clarify as the council president the discussion, I'll be glad to do so. The first person, Holly Koski.
Hi, I'm Holly Koski from, currently in Minge, New Hampshire. I just wanted to thank you all for your service and for running for office.
Thank you,
and
Holly.
The other thing is, I'm questioning the appointments. Are we going to be able to speak on that after, or is that something that I would want to
For
say
clarification, the appointments under,
under Board of Health, Library
right,
Trustees?
that is first time on the calendar. Those all go regular course tonight.
Okay,
There's no interview happening tonight. That'll
Okay.
be referred to Chairman of Ways and Means, and the chairman will establish interviews for each one of the candidates if she desires to do so.
okay.
Okay?
All right, I just wanted to say that these people that put themselves up to be on committees and to be on boards, it's great that they do it, and
Thank
that
you.
you guys have so many people interested.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Gary Zimmerman. Thank you, Holly.
Gary Zimmerman, 47 Lynn Haven Road. First, congratulations to the re-elected councilors and the new councilor. Good luck for the next 2 years. One of the things I read over the summer as I went through the code of ordinance.
Gary, if I can just ask you,
Oh,
which
it has-
one are you referring to?
It has to do with appointments,
Okay, thank you very much.
not directly with the people there, but it has to do with appointments.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. On the Code of Ordinances, there's a Article 8 for the city comptroller, and I'll just read it. You guys can do with it you want with it. I just found it a very interesting code. Section 2-31, appointment term. On or behalf of the first Monday of February of each year, the mayor shall appoint a city comptroller for a term of 3 years, beginning with such first Monday of February. Upon expiration of the said 3-year term, the position is to be filled by the mayoral reappointment as stated in section 2.3 of the Leominster Home Rule Charter. Or if reappointment is not made at the expiration of the 3-year term, the position is considered vacant and must be filled by temporary appointment as defined by section 2.5 of the Leominster Home Rule Charter. And I don't think the comptroller has been put up for appointment in many, many years.
Just for clarification, that's the prerogative of the mayor, and we have legal representation that has qualified that. So that's basically up to his discretion whether those names come down at this particular moment or not. You have anything else you'd like to share with us on that?
No, again, I would just say it by the way I read it by the code. If something's done by the side, that's fine. But again, that's what you have a code of ordinance for.
We understand.
But that's the only reason I was bringing it up. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Would anyone else like to address the council? Second call, third and final call. If not, the public forum is closed. Thank you. Should we keep this? Pauline, how are you? Good, good, thanks. A little cold up on French Hill? Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular city council meeting of January 8th, 2018 is now in session. Please stand and join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin with the roll call vote with the honorable members of the council, beginning with Councilor Cormier,
Present.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Present.
Councilor Ottinger, Councilor Bonanza,
Present?
Councilor Feckley,
Present.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Present.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Present.
Councilor Frida.
Present.
All 9 members are here. Madam Clerk, is the chairwoman of records ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. I have the minutes of the meeting of December 11th, and I find them to be in order. I also have records for the meetings of December 21st and the reorganization meeting of January 2nd, but I have not had an opportunity to review them. I just received them this evening. So I would like to ask further time on those, however, ask that the minutes of December 11th, 2017 be placed on file.
Thank you, so moved. We now move on with communications, beginning with communication 26.
C-26, relative to the appropriation of $142,000 to the Highway Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund.
Communication 26 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the agenda, regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course. Communication 27.
C-27, relative to the appropriation of $225,000 to the ITTF expense account, same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund.
Communication 27 again is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Yes, Mr. President, same situation, regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course. We'll now move on to appointments.
Appointments, Board of Health, Nicole Pear, term to expire April 15th, 2021. Library Board of Trustees, James Despo, term to expire April 15th, 2021. Emergency Management Communications Unit, David Thomas, Jr.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The appointments are referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding the Board of Health and the Library Board of Trustees appointments, these are long-term appointments. Board of Health in particular is a board of 3, so I would want to make sure that the candidate had the credentials. So I would like to have a resume sent to the City Council as soon as possible, so that we'll have time to review both of them before we have these individuals down for interviews.
Okay, thank you. So for clarification, we're going to go regular course. We're going to invite the candidate for the Board of Health and also the Library Board of Trustees for an interview.
Right.
And request that each of them provide your committee with you want a resume?
Timely. I would like a timely. Otherwise,
Okay.
we're not going to be able to have an interview if I don't have a timely. and
All
I'm
right,
not
so we're
able
going to have this interview at the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. So we have a 2-week window on that?
yes.
Madam Clerk, could you please notify the candidates? Thank you very much. So we have regular course?
Regular course.
Regular-
Now, on the Communications Unit, David Thomas Jr., we have a letter from Charlie Coggins that I believe, I could go to my committee, but I believe that it will satisfy the committee. It satisfies me as far as I don't believe that we need to have Mr. Thomas down for an interview.
Okay.
So I would just do regular course on
Okay,
that
regular course
appointment.
on that. We do have a question from Councilor Frida, if I may yield the floor to her.
Yes.
Yeah, can we get a copy of that, the rest of the committee?
The letter?
From Mr. Coggins.
Yeah, it's attached to the,
Yeah, I don't have.
oh, okay. Well, make sure you get one.
Okay, we'll make sure you have it, if you
Yep.
don't.
All right, thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
no problem on that. And Councilor Dabrowski, would you like that letter if you don't have it also, just in case?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so regular course, thank you very much. We now move on to petitions, beginning with 2818.
2818, Richard M. Marchian, amend the rules and procedures in orders of committees, Rule Number 3, committees, to reduce the number of members from 5 to 3 on the Public Safety in Traffic and Legal Affairs Committees.
2818 is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
First time on the agenda, Mr. President, regular course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll now move on to matters before the City Council, beginning with Legal Affairs. 14-18, is the Chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Petition 1418, John P. Bulger and Dorothy Rulo and 10 registered voters. Rezone the following parcels on Pleasant Street and Low Street from Residence B to Residence A. Pleasant Street, west side, map 342, lots 12 and 13. Map 481, lots 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Map 521, lot 1 and 39. Map 488, lots 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Map 494, lots 18, 3A, 3-1A, 3-2A, 3-2B, and 3-2C. Pleasant Street, east side, map 561, lots 35A, 36A, 37A. Map 340, lots 1 and 2. Map 410, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, and 23. Map 496, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6A, and 7. Map 481, lot 16. Low Street, map 488, lot 5. We have a hearing on this scheduled for January 22nd, 2017 at 7 o'clock p.m. And I am meeting with the petitioners tomorrow afternoon to sort out their proposed amendment. I guess they want to delete some of these. So the request at this time is further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read for further time. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 18-18. If there's no objection to the council, if you'd like to take these in block, feel free to.
What do you suggest to which number?
It's really your call.
So I run out of oxygen?
Sorry
We're
about
gonna take the
that.
ones that are located on that page. That'd be fine.
All right, we'll go 1818 to 2418 in block. Petition 1818, David R. Cormier, install a stop sign on Queens Road against westbound drivers at Dogwood Road. Petition 1918, David R. Cormier, place a stop sign on J Avenue against southbound drivers at Beth Avenue. 2018, David R. Cormier, place a stop sign on Beth Avenue against northbound drivers at Debbie Drive. Petition 2118, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 13-66.6, entitled Senior Citizen Parking, and repeal this section. Petition 22-18, David R. Cormier, create a left turn prohibition on Albert Drive, northwest bound to Central Street, southbound. Petition 2318, David R. Cormier, install a stop sign on Albert Drive against southwest bound drivers at Central Street. And petition 2418, David R. Cormier, install a yield sign facing drivers on Albert Drive heading northwest bound onto Central Street.
You make a recommendation on those alone?
Yeah, why don't we do that? I think there's a method to the petitioner's madness, so I think I defer this to him at this point and allow him to explain what he's trying to accomplish.
Through the chair,
For the
I'll yield the
commission.
floor to Councilor Cormier.
Okay, so I ran into the traffic cop, and I was talking to him about a stop sign on Beth Ave, and he told me that there was a lot of issues with stop signs, and so I started going through the ordinance book one day, and I got a little carried away. So anyway, do you want me to take these one by one and explain them?
I think just generally
Okay.
at this point.
Well, 18-18, I think we're waiting to hear whether we can put one there because we don't know if it's an accepted street or not, right? 19-18 and 20-18, we got a recommendation from the police department that says that there's not a problem there. And we had an opinion from Copeland and Page because someone had questioned whether or not we could put one there legally. So I think 19-18 and 20-18, maybe we can vote on it. It's up to you. 21-18 is just some cleanup that I was looking to do. As I was going through the section, I believe that like 30-something, if not 40-something years ago, the senior center used to be located somewhere near Mechanic and Water, so that parking lot was reserved for senior citizens to park Monday through Friday during daytime hours. And that's obviously old language, and that needs to be cleaned out of there. 22-18, as I was going through and looking at what needs to be cleaned up in my ward at stop signs, it looks like Albert Drive, probably not a good idea to take a left-hand turn out of there. It's a very hard turn. There's a hill. So I'm thinking that it probably needs to be prohibited, and that would need a yield sign versus a stop sign, but that's up to the Police Department Traffic Division. I'm waiting, obviously when we hear back from them. And the other stop sign on the other end of Albert Drive there's nothing there, so there needs to be something put there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we have a lot of these to follow as well. The recommendation is gonna be to table these for study, and we have a subcommittee meeting, that we'd like to schedule for January 24th. I'd say 5:15. And I believe that works for my committee members.
We'll establish that meeting now as well. Okay,
Thank
while it's on the table. Councilor Cormier, any other comments on that?
No, but just, if it's tabled, we can still have a subcommittee meeting, right? I mean, I don't know if we
Yeah,
can.
it's not a bad idea to go further time on that.
That's what I would suggest further time.
I don't wanna read these again, dude.
Well, then let's get the subcommittee over with and pass them or deny them then.
Easy for you guys to
We
say.
can, we have waived readings in past, remember the zoning in the early 2000s? I read them.
All right, I'll amend that to, further time.
Okay, so, we've heard the recommendation for further time for 18-18 through 24-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Frida,
Is that a committee consensus on
through the
further
chair.
time?
It is
Well,
what-
I assumed it was.
Oh, well, good,
Well, we
good, that
have-
was a bad assumption.
We do, Councilor Frida, we do have two members that did suggest tabling, so that becomes the report.
Yeah.
Would you, I'll yield the floor back to you if you like.
Yeah, no,
If you're
I
asking for
support further time, just because it's
Okay.
gonna take a lot of discussion on.
Okay.
I was suggesting further time too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're there.
Yeah.
We're there.
We're
Good
there.
job.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a recommendation for further time on 18-18 through 24-18. Are there any other comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation for further time, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. We now move on to 25-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 2518, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 13-79, entitled Yield Signs, to reflect the existing signs as follows. Litchfield Street facing drivers on the exit to Litchfield Street from Central Street northbound. Litchfield Street facing drivers exiting Litchfield Street, heading southbound on Central Street. Similar to the previous petitions, the request is for further time, and we'll also be taking these up at the subcommittee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation from Legal Affairs for further time on 25-18, bringing it into the 124-18 subcommittee meeting. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation for further time, please indicate the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. Mr. Chairman, 26-18.
Thank you, Mr. President. Petition 2618, David R. Cormier, amend Chapter 13, Section 1377, entitled Stop Signs by deleting the following. Tanzio Road against eastbound and westbound drivers at Aspinwall Avenue. Graham Street against east and westbound drivers at Central Street. Litchfield Street against southwestbound drivers at Central Street. Willard Street against northeastbound drivers at Lancaster Street. Viscaloid Avenue against southbound drivers at Lancaster Street. Whitney Street against northeast and southwestbound drivers at Mechanic Street. Whitney Street against northeast and southwestbound drivers at Water Street. Lindell Avenue against eastbound and westbound drivers at Merriam Avenue. Washington Street against northeast and southeastbound drivers at Merriam Avenue. Bel Air Heights against eastbound drivers at Old Mill Road. Aspinwall Avenue against northbound drivers at Malvern Street. Johnson Street northwestbound entering Viscoid Avenue. Johnson Street southwestbound entering Viscoid Avenue. Day Street against southwestbound drivers at Main Street. North Street against east and westbound drivers at Main Street. Mill Street against westbound drivers at Hawes Street. Mill Street against westbound drivers entering Hawes Street. Park Street against southbound drivers at Monument Square. River Street against northbound drivers at Hamilton Street. River Street against southeastbound drivers at Main Street. Nichols Street against northbound drivers at North Main Street. Lindell Avenue against eastbound drivers at North Main Street. Cross Street against westbound drivers at Central Street. As was the case with the previous petition, the recommendation would be further time, and we'll also be taking this up in subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation for further time on 2618. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Frida.
Through the chair, to the chair.
Sure.
I still don't know why we're doing further time. We're not having a meeting till after our next meeting. The subcommittee meeting isn't until after our next meeting.
I think the
I mean, I'm not suggesting tabling it to bury it. I'm suggesting tabling it. Give us, some of these are going on to major highways. Some of these are on private roads. We've got a lot of questions that we need to answer.
No,
So we're gonna give it further time at the next meeting and give it further time again?
I don't disagree with the sentiment. I think the issue is, if it's tabled, there's a question of being able to schedule the subcommittee meeting. So that's I think that's the issue that was raised.
If I may poll your members,
Sure.
and your recommendation as a counselor is?
Further time.
Councilor Frida?
I'll go further time, but I don't think we
Okay,
should.
thank you. All right, good. Council, sir, the recommendation read for further time. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Cormier?
Yeah, thank you very much. Quite frankly, I think we should pass this tonight. I mean, if anybody read any of this, okay, every one of these streets that's petitioned, every single one of them is pretty self-explanatory if you know the city of Leominster. Graham Street, eastbound and westbound at Central. I mean, there's traffic lights there. All these intersections have traffic lights. I went through this whole section of the ordinance. They all have traffic lights. Cross Street against westbound drivers at Central Street. That's probably from when Cross Street used to be a two-way road. It's now a one-way road. You can't go out that way anymore. There's no stop sign there anymore. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. You talk about having to read this a million times. I mean, did anybody look at what's been petitioned? It's all places where there's streetlights. There's no need to further time anything. Pass it. That's what I say, pass it. We don't have
Any
to
other-
read it a million times.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments on the floor? Councilor Bonanza?
I echo that. We're just, if we bring it to committee, we're just gonna go through the same exercise that we're going through right now. I've read them. The council's right. They don't apply, not one of them. Is there a call for a stop sign control at any one of those intersections? So I'm fine with passing it tonight.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, you guys may be right, but I know we've got a recommendation to the police, to the police department. It's their job to do all this, so I prefer to get the recommendation from them. And if they concur, then I'll be happy to do that as well.
Okay, so your recommendation is?
Further time.
I'll poll the committee. Councilor Frida? Further time it is. Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of further time, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. We now move on to petition 27-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, petition 2718, David R. Cormier, amend chapter 13, section 13-77, entitled Stop Signs to reflect the following existing stop signs. Bainbridge Street against southeastbound drivers at Willard Street, Graham Street against westbound drivers at Union Street, Gamache Lane against southbound drivers at Grant Street, DeChico Drive against northbound drivers at Union Street, Grant Street against eastbound drivers at Central Street, Research Drive against eastbound drivers at Central Street, Emerson Lane against northbound drivers at Holland Woods Road, Holland Woods Road against westbound drivers at Pleasant Street, Walden Court against northbound drivers at Holland Woods Road, Tonzio Road against northeastbound drivers at Lancaster Street, Tonzio Road against eastbound drivers at Melbourne Street, Bel Air Heights against westbound drivers at Leggett Hill Road, Samoset Drive against southeastbound drivers at Willard Street, Spindle Top Drive against southwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Ballard Court against northwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Neelan Circle against southeastbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Candlewood Drive against northwestbound drivers at Neelan Circle, Candlewood Drive against eastbound drivers at Willard Street, Samoset Drive against northeastbound drivers at Candlewood Drive, intersection closest to Willard Street, Candlewood Drive against southeastbound and northwestbound drivers at Samoset Drive, Samoset Drive against southwestbound and northeastbound drivers at Candlewood Drive. As was the case with the prior petitions, the recommendation is further time, and we'll take it up in subcommittee. And if we could just, perhaps remind the traffic bureau, that we need a recommendation.
We want that for that committee or before, actually.
Be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice. Okay, thank you. All right, councilors heard the recommendation read for further time on petition 27-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Cormier.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yep, this is another one that I spent a lot of time driving around. These signs already exist. Part of me says pass it, but there is a part of me that does say that, especially Candlewood Drive, Samoset Drive area, Keeneland Circle, Ballard Court, those ones there, the police should really go out there and inspect everything. That's a newly accepted development, so the stop signs do exist and they are public roads now, but they should go out and inspect everything, and I think we should, for the January 24th meeting, have a recommendation from the police department, and see what they say, and then we can talk about each one of these, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Bonanza.
Just a housekeeping matter in terms of the committee. If we get a recommendation back on these last two petitions before our meeting of the 22nd, I mean, it wouldn't be, assuming that it's an affirmative from the traffic department, we could get rid of that part of our agenda on that subcommittee meeting.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, just wanted
Yeah.
to make that clear.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, councilors heard the recommendation read by Legal Affairs for further time. All those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. We'll now move on to matters before the City Council. Finance. Communication 24, is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, but I have a financial report at the outset. If you'll bear my indulgence. The stabilization account on July 1st of 2017 stood with a balance of $14,517,855. To date, throughout the fiscal year, all of the past matters, as well as the ones pending on tonight's agenda, total against that stabilization balance, $3,625,311, leaving a balance of $10,892,544.
Thank you.
Relative to communication 24, relative to the appropriation of $14,300 to the Highway Department capital outlay expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This deals with a collapse in the retaining wall along the Monusnock Brook in the section between Central and Mechanic Streets. That's the part of Monusnock Brook that has been redone in the past. Attached to the communication was a proposal and a scope of work by the engineering firm of Woodward and Curran, addressed to the DPW director, outlining the work that would be necessary in order to plan the repair of that collapsed section of the retaining wall, including a structural evaluation and all of the things that went along with that. The cost of the Woodward and Curran design work in order to repair that wall is $14,300. something that's a safety matter, and something, of course, that needs to be engineered before it's reconstructed. It's a critical part of our infrastructure there. This is in the section right before, or in the foreground of 14 Manning Avenue. It would be my position to grant C-24, and Mr. President, if I could just poll my committee quickly.
If I can yield the floor to Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I concur.
Councilor David Cormier.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, your recommendation?
The recommendation is unanimous of the Finance Committee to grant C-24.
Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 24. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $14,300 be appropriated to the Highway Department Capital Outlay Expense Account. Same to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read. Are there any comments? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Mr. Chairman, Communication 25.
Yes, C-25, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request the City Council allow the deficit spending of the Snow and Ice Expense Account in an amount not to exceed $250,000 as authorized by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D. Councils may remember at one of our end-of-the-year meetings, a point was raised as to whether this has been done, should be done on an annual basis. It's the sort of the practice, a customary practice that we've been engaged in the past. This allows the deficit spending for snow and ice removal, and it's authorized by Massachusetts general laws. And I would be in favor of this, and I'd ask my committee members.
Will do. We'll poll, beginning with the clerk, Council Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third member, Council David Cormier.
I also agree.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, a unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C-25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? Council Cormier.
Yeah, just very quickly, while we're on this subject about snow and ice, for the next meeting, can we have the totals to date on what we've spent so far? I know hasn't been an extremely bad winter, but I'm kind of curious as to where we stand.
That's a good point. I was going to ask for a munis report to date, so we'll get that as part of it.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to grant Communication 25, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 25 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
No,
Excuse me.
Does it require an order?
No order on that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, yes. Sure.
Do we have any idea about free cash?
Council
We heard
Bonanza at
any-
this point.
I will inquire when I ask for the munis report, see if I can get an update about that as well.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions on finance? We're good? Okay, and we'll now move on to appointments. We have one individual for the Disability Commission. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Feckley, the chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appointments, Disability Commission, David R. Cormier, expires 4/15/2019. This was on the agenda last time, regular course. We did not set up an interview because David R. Cormier is our Ward 3 counselor.
I hope you scrutinized them.
Yes, and I did have a conversation with him. Counselor Cormier has attended a Disability Commission meeting, and he has spoken with the members of the committee. I know they prefer their members to be vetted, so that actually must have been, pleasant thing for them. He spoke to them about what his expectations would be and vice versa. It seems like it would be a very good fit. So I would be very pleased to grant this appointment, but I would ask you to poll my committee.
I'll yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Frida.
I agree.
Thank you. Third member, Councilor Dombrowski. Thank you. Madam Chair?
Yes, so we would, my recommendation would be that we approve the appointment of David R. Cormier to the Disability Commission.
Thank you. Councilor, sir, the recommendation read for confirmation. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? Councilor Cormier.
Yeah, this is not a paid position by any means, and the city clerk has mentioned I can vote, but I think I'd rather abstain my own appointment.
Okay.
I just don't think it's a good
All right.
idea, so I will
Okay.
abstain. But
So-
thank you, though.
Okay. So duly noted. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, we'll do a regular confirmation on this, so this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Ottinger.
Yay.
Council Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
And I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 8-0. The appointment has been confirmed. Thank you for serving on that committee.
Congratulations.
Just a side note, there is a bylaw that an elected official be on this committee too,
That's great.
so
Thank you.
I'm proud to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now go on to old business. Are there any matters before the council under old business? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yes, I would like to follow up on the conversation that we had when the mayor was down earlier. I would like to send a letter to the mayor asking what the balance is in the open space fund. As I did mention, a constituent emailed me, having just received his tax bill, and had contributed to the open space fund in the past, but wanted to know what the balance was, what expenditures have been made out of it, and for what purpose.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
And then, do you want the letter directly, or can we share that with the council?
Oh, no, absolutely. It should come
Okay.
from the clerk to the
Yeah.
mayor, and then it should absolutely be shared with the entire
Okay.
council.
All right,
Absolutely.
thank you. Any other items under old business? Councilor Feckley?
I would like to see a continuation of the conversation that came up when we were talking about the Central Street property, and you rightly, stopped it because that was not on the agenda, the issue about the tax increases, because, I received quite a few questions and comments and complaints from constituents. They no sooner got their tax bills that we had a snowstorm, and they wanted to know why the streets weren't salted or whatever.
Right.
So I think that if we could ask the mayor at his convenience, and Bill Mitchell as well.
Right.
Because I think that we really were getting somewhere with some good information that should be shared with the public.
Right. Can you help me tailor the question specifically?
Absolutely.
We'll work on that offline, and then we'll present that to the clerk to submit it.
Will do.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other items under old business? If not, we'll move on to new business. We have a few matters here, beginning with the first reading of the ordinance. The point of origin was Legal Affairs Petition 11-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. First reading of an ordinance, amend Chapter 22 of the revised ordinances entitled zoning by amending Section 2214 entitled, quote, adoption and amendment, end quote, by deleting and replacing said section. My recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance, Mr. President, and establish a hearing on the second.
It's not necessary. We just need to pass it by the end of February.
We had the hearing on the petition. We had the
Last year.
hearing on the petition.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is the
That's
next, the
okay.
next one I need to
Yep,
establish. I'm
exactly.
sorry, you're right. So my recommendation is to adopt the first reading. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Frida.
I agree.
Third member, Councilor Bonanza.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman? Recommendation, please.
Recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, adopt the first reading of the ordinance, formally petition 11-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The first reading has been adopted. We'll now move on to the next petition. First reading of the ordinance. Point of origin was petition 17-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. First reading of an ordinance, amend Chapter 13 of the revised ordinances entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic by amending Section 13-77 entitled Stop Signs by inserting Queens Road against eastbound drivers at Dogwood Road. My recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance, and we do need to establish a hearing for the second reading for January 22nd, 2018 at 6:50 p.m.
Okay, can we poll the members of the committee?
Yes, please.
Councilor,
I agree.
thank you. Third member?
Concur.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, again?
The recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance and establish the hearing for the second reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard their recommendation to adopt the first reading of the ordinance, establish a hearing on January 22nd, 2018, 6:50 p.m. in the council chambers. Are there any comments or questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Why do we put you two sitting next to each other? That's messing everybody up. Okay. Pauline, your fault. Councilor
I was here
Odenger.
first.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Counselor Feckley?
Yay.
Counselor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Counselor Dobrowski?
Yes.
Counselor Frida?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as a yay. The first reading has been adopted with a hearing established. We now move on to a resolution. This resolution is before the chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the agenda, so regular course. But I would ask if any member of my committee would like to have Bill Mitchell send down a referral or come down and speak to us regarding this.
Do you feel that's essential, Counselor?
With the information that we have. I don't feel, I just want to,
Okay.
I mean, I have enough information. I just received it today, but just looking at this, I think it's
Okay,
going
if we
to
can
be.
pull your committee, Counselor?
Can we just read it into
Frida?
the
Oh,
record?
yeah,
Okay.
that was
We
my
will.
point of order, too.
Okay, you want to read it first? Thank you, go ahead,
The resolution?
please.
To enter into a tax increment financing agreement between the City of Leominster and Process Cooling Systems, Inc., located at 800 Research Drive, map 503, lot 310. I don't, so the entire,
I don't
Please.
think you need to read that.
Well,
no,
don't think so.
no, it's 5 pages.
you can abbreviate it at this point, right? Okay, so if you can give an abbreviation of it, if not, that's fine, we'll just hold off to the next time.
Okay, so, so I could do the second page, that's the actual resolution. Okay, Resolution Process Cooling Systems, Inc., Tax Incentive Financing, TIF Agreement. Whereas the proposed project is located at 800 Research Drive, Leominster, Mass., which is within the boundaries of Assessor's Map 503, Lot 310. Whereas the City of Leominster has agreed to offer Process Cooling Systems, Inc., a tax increment financing agreement. Said agreement is hereby supported by the City Council, and the tax incrementing financing plan is incorporated by reference herein. Whereas Process Cooling Systems, Inc. will invest $5.5 million over a 5-10-year period and create 16 permanent full-time jobs, potentially for residents of the city and of the North Worcester County Economic Target Area over the period of 10 years. Whereas the City Council of the City of Leominster strongly supports increased economic development to provide additional jobs for city residents and industrial activity within the city to promote and develop a healthy economy and stronger tax base. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Leominster, the City Council of Leominster approves the project application for Process Cooling Systems, Inc., and forwards said application for certification to the Massachusetts Economic Assistance Coordinating Council for its approval and endorsement. Further, the City Council of the City of Leominster supports the mayor to enter into a tax increment financing agreement between the City of Leominster and Process Cooling Systems, Inc. Said agreement will provide for an exemption on property taxes based on the growth portion in assessed valuation of the property as follows. Real estate. The agreement calls for an exemption from taxation specifically on the increased value of real estate property as a result of the redevelopment as follows in the table shown below. Year 1, July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, tax exemption formula 100% of the increment. Year 2, July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, tax exemption formula 100% of the increment. Year 3, July 1st, 2020, June 30th, 2021, tax exemption formula 90% of the increment. Year 4, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, tax exemption formula 80% of the increment. Year 5, July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, tax exempt formula 70% of the increment. Year 6, July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, 60% of the increment. Year 7, July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, 50% of the increment. Year 8, July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, 40% of the increment. Year 9, July 1st, 2026, June 30th, 2027, 30% of the increment. Year 10, July 1st, 2027, June 30th, 2028, 20% of the increment. In accordance with the requirements and regulations established which govern the implementation of such tax increment financing agreements, the agreement will be in effect as of this fiscal year 2019, July 1st, 2019, and will extend through fiscal year 2028, June 30th, 2028. Adopted by the City Council, Leominster City Council, and then approved by Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, City of Leominster.
Thank you.
So regular course, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councilors heard the recommendation read for regular course. Are there any comments or regular course it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, if you look at the letter, I think if there's any council that has any questions, that we get them to the committee or to the chair, because they need to have this voted on by January 22nd
Good
to meet
point.
the deadline of the
Okay,
state.
good. All right, so a little bit of work to do before we meet again. Okay, great. So if each counselor can keep that in mind. If you have any questions, you can feed them directly to the chairwoman of Ways and Means. All right, thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read for regular course. Good. Okay, we'll now move on to a few other matters under new business, now listed on the calendar. I'm going to yield the floor back to Councilor Feckley again. You have a letter that has not been read into the record at this point, and then we have a discussion for the Committee of Ways and Means regarding.
I do, Mr. President, and it's with regret that I read this letter, actually. It's dated December 18th, 2017, addressed to the Leominster City Council. Dear council members, I would like to advise you of my retirement effective June 29th, 2018. During my remaining 6 months, I will be happy to assist you in your selection of a new city clerk. My hope is for a smooth transition, so please let me know if there is anything that I can do to facilitate that. I am very thankful for the opportunity to have served as your city clerk. The support you have given me during my tenure is very much appreciated. Sincerely, Lynn A. Bouchard, City Clerk. And I just want to mention that I am, from my own statement, very pleased with all of the facilitation that Lynn has provided me, and I'm sure that my fellow councilors will agree with that.
Thank you.
So that's read with a little bit of a heavy heart.
Yeah, we certainly will have a little bit of a send-off. I don't feel that the clerk's really regretting too much, but we are.
Yes, exactly.
If I was
Yeah.
president, I wouldn't accept the letter.
I wouldn't accept the letter. Just a message to her husband, Monday Night Football's over.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the process here.
So the process would be, this falls under the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee to work with the Human Resources Director and the City Clerk to determine, duties and responsibilities, go over resume, and then, what venues it would be advertised in, set a deadline for applications, and then once all the applications are submitted, we would have an executive session of the Ways and Means Committee to look over the applications and narrow them down to the point where we would have 2 to 3 perhaps, we'll discuss this with our committee, final candidates to come and appear before the city council for interviews.
Okay.
And then, we would take it from there as far as making a recommendation.
Okay, what I'd like to do, I'd like to ask the committee, in a timely fashion, to have a subcommittee meeting at your convenience, and invite the Human Resource Director to come to it along with the city clerk. And at that point, you can establish the ground rules as far
Right.
as how it's going to play out,
Yep.
and then move forward from that point. And just keep us in touch with what's happening, and once the job description is ready to publish, if you can just share it with us.
Yep.
And we'll move on, okay?
Yep, be
All right,
very
thank you.
transparent and open process. We went through this with the Assistant City Clerk. I thought that, and you were on the agenda, on the committee,
Right.
Mr. President, and I believe that it went very smoothly, and, we made a very good choice, and, it's proved out. So I'm hoping that we have that same type of process.
Excellent. I will yield the floor to the members of the committee if they have any other input. Councilor Freeman?
Yeah, if we could be provided, or if I could be provided, I'm sure everybody else would want it, a copy of the last posting, the
Good idea.
notice that went out.
Yep.
In case it has to be revised. What was that?
Oh, it will be revised. They were
Might-
working
might
out,
have
they were
to be-
working out of
might have
shoe
to be.
boxes when she got the job.
Yeah.
And what the background information was as you started last time.
Good. And third member, do you have any input on that, Counselor?
No, I agree with that. I think
Okay.
it should be done sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
It's a big curve.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking on the task. And if, keep us updated, hopefully by the next meeting, you'll have some type of progress as to what you would like to do. If you can report back if you're ready at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Legal Affairs, anything on your agenda table tonight for new business items or?
No, not tonight. We just had that subcommittee meeting. I think we're all also gonna be talking a little bit about
We,
marijuana, and we're gonna be inviting the planning director down
yeah, we wanna,
Okay.
don't we wanna
Okay.
establish a subcommittee meeting on
You
that
wanna
same
do-
date
at 5 o'clock.
at January 24th
At 5 o'clock.
at 5 o'clock, and
We
Kristen.
set the other one for 5.
Your other one
It's
said
at
for
5:15.
5:15.
5:15, you might wanna.
You wanna do this
It's
one?
only
Well,
gonna
it
take
just-
15 minutes?
I think we anticipated that would be short.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a long meeting.
Well, if you're talking about January 24th,
Yes.
Yeah.
that just, we're not setting another meeting, that's just part of your agenda.
Well, shit's gotta be posted, so,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
let the city
Right,
clerk
with the
know.
Well, that will be
Topics.
posted with the items listed.
Right, but
Put her on first.
her at
Okay.
5
She can
o'clock,
go home,
RE,
right, right.
recreational marijuana or marijuana zoning.
Okay.
Right.
We want to take a safety vote. I'm sure from a professional courtesy, we don't need to at this point, but to take a safety vote to invite her to attend that meeting.
Sure.
Okay?
Makes sense.
All right, so the recommendation would be to invite the planning director. Any members of the planning board or just the director?
Just the director.
Just the director to the subcommittee meeting on January 24th, 5:15?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay, 5 o'clock. All those in favor? 9-0, thank you. All right, we're good on that. Anything else? Any other new business? We're good?
I have just a
Go ahead.
point of order on something prior in the agenda. The Ways and Means Committee Chair asked for timely resumes on, should we give them a more firm deadline so there's no question?
Okay, through
I
the
don't know
chair,
if
go
we're
ahead.
talking-
Yeah, I was gonna speak to the city clerk after the meeting about that, yeah, I think maybe by the end of next week.
For
because-
review.
Right,
Okay.
for review.
All right, just so they know.
Right.
Yeah, because I would wanna see what the, the credentials were before we
Okay.
really reached out to have somebody come down here.
Okay. Good on that?
Yep.
Okay, Council Frida?
Just for future, I'm gonna talk to Councilor Cormier. She's chair of small business. One of the comments, I've heard from 2 or 3 different companies, is that they've been held up by a month to 2 months to 3 months by the electric company. And just to have them come in with small business and public service, just to set up a meeting with them and find out why, these issues are taking, sometime in February.
Good idea.
Just to find out what the process is and why, I mean, that's affecting business. It could ultimately affect people's desire to come to Leominster if that's a major issue.
Right.
So, I'll coordinate with Councilor Cormier.
It's a great idea. Just take a look at the agenda with the clerk and feel free to do it at your convenience. Okay? All right, any other items? Councilor Ottinger, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to say that, taking over for Councilor Lanciani is not a easy job. I don't think anybody can ever replace him, but I'm honored to be sitting in his chair tonight, But during the course of the election, Councilor Lanciani made a remark to me that he was the only councilor that had an American flag on his desk, and he wanted to ensure that that flag stayed in the city council after he left. And I believe he
gave it.
delegated that responsibility to Councilor Vidanza. But in the light of what Councilor Lanciani had done, I'd like to give the city council an opportunity to each city councilor to have a flag on their desk. And alongside that, I would also present them with a POW flag. I have a couple here to show you. And in the interest of time, I would distribute them after the meeting, okay?
Sure.
So we don't take up any time, but the POW flag and an American flag for each counselor.
Check that POW flag. We don't have one in front of City Hall anymore either. We haven't
That's
had it
nice.
for a long time.
Maybe we should get one, huh?
Absolutely.
I think that would be a good task to take on. But just for point of order, when you display the flags, that would be the proper way.
Thank you, thank you. It's a great gesture and a gift, thank you very much. Just tell
Thank you.
Mr. Voto keep his hands off them. They're ours. Thank you very much. Anything else under new business, any community activities going on? Okay, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yep. Council Bedanza and I both serve on the Library Board of Trustees, and I've been the chairperson of the committee looking for a new director. As many of you know, Susan Shelton, after many, many years of fine service in the city, has retired because she still is working very hard. But we have come to the conclusion of our search for a new library director, and have made an offer, and the person has accepted. So we will have a new library director. Her name is Sandra Murphy. She'll be starting on February 5th. And I hope that, people in the community, people here will stay tuned. She's a lovely woman with a lot of very good experience, and we think a lot of great energy that she will bring, to the library. Susan Shelton's shoes are certainly huge shoes to fill, and we certainly don't expect anybody to be able to do that right away. But we're very happy with Sandra. We're excited about that.
It's great, thank you. Feel free to bring her down here if you'd
Yeah,
like to
we'd love
introduce her to the
Absolutely.
community.
Absolutely. No, we
At your
will.
convenience.
Well in advance of the budget.
We can even do like a discussion with her if you want to.
Just a nice
Yeah,
introduction.
That's all,
Yeah.
yep,
An introduction to the council and to
nice.
the community. Absolutely.
awesome, thank you very much. Any other items? If not, do we have a motion for adjournment? Seconded? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's over, thank you very much.